All right, well, no music because this is technology enough for us. Welcome into the Maritime Trade Preview Show. I'm Adam. I'm Jeremy. We're pleased to be joined by all our friends from the division in one location here. We got Tracey from the Q Review, Pat McNeil from the Cape Breton Eagles, Johnny Rocket from 19 Podcasts up in Bathurst, and Jamie Tozer. Once again, no idea where he is, but he's on the road somewhere from Station Nation. Gentlemen, welcome in. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having us.
Great.
Yeah, no complaint.
On break, not doing too bad.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about what happened last night there, Pat. We're not very happy with you, but I guess
we were due.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the quieter trade periods. I know, Pat, you've been in the league for quite a while. Jamie, you as well. I mean, is this the quietest trade period you've ever seen on an opening day?
Well, I'll start, I guess. I think sometimes for whatever reason, it does take a while for the trades to come through, which I never really understood that because you know that there's all these deals that have been made already. So I'm not sure why they don't get processed right away. Might have something to do with the fact that it's Sunday that the trade period opens. So, you know, a lot of offices might be closed and all that whatnot. But just looking around the league, I think this year it's a recipe for a lack of trades. More contenders means less sellers. You've got teams that aren't necessarily contenders that don't want to sell. You've got teams towards the bottom that don't have their first pick, so they have less incentive to sell. And then you've got some of the weaker teams that are being led by younger players who they're not going to sell. So maybe the market's a little bit thinner. As you guys know, Richie Tebow was on the air with me last night. He said that was the case, that there wasn't as much out there. And Jim Holton kind of hinted to that when I was talking to him on the weekend as well. So I'm sure there'll be surprises. There always is, but I wouldn't read too much into the early slow start. But I would say it could be an indication of what we're in for or what we're not in for.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't even feel like there's been a lot of like concrete rumors and speculation that we've seen in past years either. Like I feel like on the first day of the trade, we get, a dozen trades confirmed that we've known about for like a month. But It doesn't even feel like there's a ton of those this year. And I don't know if that's actually the case or if it's just the very sad demise of the sports media in Eastern Canada. But it does feel like we're in for a bit of a lighter year.
Yeah, it's every time you open up X, a different writer is seeming to leave his paper, and it's just like we're not getting these. We're still getting the lull on set bombs, but up in Bathurst, there, Johnny. What are you hearing as our Quebec guy for the Maritime Division?
It's dead, honestly. One of the first year that I don't have anything concrete at all. And even yesterday when the Gravel and Chiarlo trade was announced, I was like, what in the world is going on? Like, I've heard a few rumblings about Saint-Hilaire going to Bécomo. I've never heard about Gravel, guys. So I was kind of shocked about that. And it's one of the first year that you hear stuff and then the day after, it doesn't make any sense. And the day after that, I mean, somebody said that it's not true. Like Jamie just said, I mean, back then there was like rumors that we heard like weeks before, and the day that the trade is opening, everything was announced, and we were like, oh yeah, we knew that for like 2 weeks now. But I don't know if anything other than the Chiarlo trade and Gravel trade was announced today, but I don't think so. So it's really odd, and I think like Pat said that there's a lot of buyers and maybe not a lot of sellers. So basically everybody will either overpay for a big guy at the end of the trading deadline or nothing will happen, which sucks for us that we like to speculate and like rumors. But yeah, I mean, all the GMs are pretty happy with that because none of them like to overpay for stuff. So it's funny to see what will happen. But as for now, I mean, the market, it seems dead.
I can't remember the last time the number one team in the country traded their number one goaltender. That's when I saw that last night. My first instinct, this has to be a dream. It can't be true. And Chiarlo almost stole that series.
Depends who you ask. He did steal it.
Against Moncton last year, right? Yeah. Like this to me has panic written all over it in Bécomo, but at the same time, like, what's the record? They're what's the panic for? Yeah, it's like last year. What was the guy in Bécomo saying? If they gave up more than 4 goals, they would lose the game. But if they gave up less than 4 goals, they would win the game. Yeah, the trade doesn't make sense to me. Like, is Gravel that much of an upgrade on Chiarlo, or even an upgrade? Depends on who you ask.
Yeah, for me, I think he was like 21-3 if he gave up 3 or less. Like it's just, it doesn't make any sense because now you still need a backup goaltender. The whole thing with everybody around the league was Baie-Comeau may need a backup goaltender, and I don't know where their motivation was because for me I don't think Gravel is better than Charlotte. But Chris, what are you hearing in Nova Scotia in Halifax land, because they got 3 guys at the World Juniors and there's some panic hit as they've lost I think 2 of their last 3 on the old boards where everything is perfect. Are there any panic in Moose Country?
Yeah, I'd say there's quite a bit of panic. I mean, of course, they have Dumais and Furlong as well as Rousseau out with the World Juniors, and so they just got Vidicek back. But I'd say they had an 8-4 loss to Bathurst as soon as the World Junior guys left. So I think there's definitely some panic in Moose Country. No shot at the T10 at all. Just 8-4 loss was a tough one on home ice. But I have heard rumblings about possibly Israel Manenskim coming from Sherbrooke. Now, that was just a rumor I heard around the city. Nothing confirmed yet, but I'd say they definitely, their bottom 6 was always an issue, I think, since the start of the season. And so I think they're really going to look to bolster that, and definitely bringing in Manenskim is going to be a good move if that goes through.
Yeah. When a couple weekends ago when Halifax was in town, I remember Tipper LeBlanc, who's their head scout, was on with Marty Kingston, and he basically said Halifax is 2 top 6 forwards away from even being in the conversation of being a legitimate contender. And obviously Manenskim would fill one of those top 2.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting in the rink in Moncton on Friday night, and I'm being told that Justin Robidas might be leaving the ECHL to go to Halifax. So that kind of adds up with what Pat said earlier about so many players that are playing pro this year that might want to come back and try to win a championship. And I think not sure how that would go in Halifax, because I know the fans of Halifax hated Robidas during the final last year, and then all of a sudden they have to do a complete 180 and fall in love with him.
I feel like it would be a definite. They'll love him on his team, hate him on the other team. But have you heard that, Chris, in Halifax at all?
You guys telling me it was the first time I even heard Robidas was considering leaving pro. But I mean, I could see it happening, looking to win a championship, another one, of course.
Yeah.
And I have the lines here for the Mooseheads since the World Juniors have happened, and right now it's Reese Peich, Liam Kilfoyle, and Matthew Cataford. Not exactly the ideal first line.
No.
Their second line, when they're healthy, is Lou Levesque, Kilfoyle, and Crosby, and 2 of those are out. And from what I hear, I saw Levesque in a cast last week, so I don't think he's coming back anytime soon. But
Ouch.
at least a month, I would say. So they definitely need help, and they need it now.
I guess, Pat, your GM is vocal on wanting to buy some top 6 forwards, and around the league, it looks like everyone wants to upgrade their bottom 6 and their bottom pairs. But obviously, your GM, Couturier, came out and said he wanted to add top 6 forward. Where do you feel where that could lead?
Well, as I said, there's not really necessarily a ton out there. And the Eagles, it would have to be, you'd think, somebody who would come back as a 20-year-old that know the team is not expecting to win a championship this year. But there's always a possibility of an 18-year-old, but then you're getting into a very high price. You're maybe rolling the dice on someone that hasn't developed yet. In terms of high-end 19-year-old forwards, I mean, to me, Fauchon is the big name that's out on the market. I'm assuming Blainville-Boisbriand will move him. A guy like Mainville and Gatineau, you wonder how much of that is just a product of him putting up points because of the team he's on. To be honest, is not that good. Johnny was talking earlier. The fact that he hasn't heard a lot is interesting, because to me, the one team that has a lot to sell and you'd think would be selling would be Bathurst, because they have a lot of veterans that would be of interest. Henneberry's got to be one of the most coveted guys on the market. Arsenault as well. Of course, the Eagles, fingers crossed, it looks like we're getting a potential impact 19-year-old for free. Jacob Newcomb comes back. That'll be a big boost. You don't want to put too much pressure on the guy with everything he's been through. You don't know what his conditioning is going to be like, but obviously, that's being taken care of very methodically because he's already practiced with the team, but, still probably a ways before we see him. But that's what you're looking at. Maybe you see something in terms of an offensive-minded defenseman, too. That could be another way to kickstart the offense. But I just wanted to go back earlier, too, since we were talking about the Ciarlo thing. One thing to note with Baie-Comeau, Ciarlo was under 900, I think, up until 2 weeks ago. So I think that was
He still is.
Yeah, so some of these
Sure.
trades are byproduct of what you saw earlier, and I think Bordage at one point was undefeated, so I think they have confidence in him. But in terms of backup goaltenders, that's something Chris, I'm sure, could tell you. Halifax is going to be looking for one. Ruan Miranda is probably going to be looking for a backup, maybe Victoriaville as well. So that's going to be a situation there with the Eagles, specifically when it comes to goaltending. You've got two really good goaltenders, but maybe that's a situation where we can deal from a position of strength. I'm not saying I've heard any rumors there, but that's always a possibility anytime a team's got two good goalies. So that's something to look for from the Cape Breton point of view. But like you said, Adam, Sylvan's kind of an open that they're looking for a forward. So I don't think he's lying. That's what we should probably look for.
Yeah.
I was awake early enough this morning to put my French literacy to good use, and decided to go read the
Better than you than me.
the French message boards, and a player that's being linked to Cape Breton on the board is Thomas Sabolka from Val d'Or, which would be a pretty good addition to the back end, and
Which he was kind of rumored to be coming here as
Yeah.
well. One of the players that you want.
I threw
in
that
here.
name around, but obviously they're not going to move Malota, so Stahan I think would probably be the odd man out in that deal, and I can say this because I'm not wearing the Eagles polo there, but I could say that Stahan is hasn't exactly probably panned out the way that the Cape Breton had hoped, considering pretty sure we played men's hockey in Slovakia last year. So that's and if it was, he should be playing for the Slovakian World Junior team, but instead he's at the Slovakian team at the Junior A Challenge. So it kind of comes back to him not necessarily being what they are hoping for him to be, and I think that would probably be the logical man out to be included in that in a potential trade like that.
That's the thing. When you get 3 or 4 teams going for one guy, it's who's going to move that euro, right?
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully, presumably in that trade, Stahan will go the other way. To me, he's a guy that could play in the queue. He's just turned out to be a lower line forward. I'm not too upset in terms of his production. To me, the second round of the import draft's a bit of the roll of the dice anyway. Lubos had an interesting knack for drawing penalties. It's the one thing he's been really good at, but his numbers are what you see from him. He's a lower line forward, and hopefully seems like a good guy. And my meetings with him, hopefully he'd get a chance to play in the league. But that's one of the byproducts of the game. You can only have the 2 imports, so that he would be the guy going in the other direction, surely, if that were to happen.
Unless you find that hidden link where you have 4 imports and 2 of them are still Canadian.
Yeah, I like the team that have 2 guys away from the World Juniors, and neither of them are.
Yeah, exactly. We've had you on a couple times there, Jamie, and Peter Reynolds has been the name that I continue to link to moving. If he wants to move to the green and gold, have there been any other things you've heard on him moving, or is he pretty much going to finish his career as a Sea Dog?
Yeah, the vibe right now seems to be that he's not going to be moved, but that could obviously change. But at the same time, if he's going to go, I mean, the deal kind of has to happen quick here, because obviously some teams that are looking to upgrade their overage spots are going to start to look elsewhere and fill those with other players. So certainly the vibe I get is that he's going to stay. But we'll see. I mean, he's had some great auditions lately against Halifax. He's been as one of St. John's best players. Well, he's been one of the best players all season, but he's been very good against Halifax even. If he does want to go to Halifax, I wouldn't be surprised if there's conversations about moving there. But again, there's obviously rumors about the Mooseheads getting overagers from other places too. So if something's going to happen there, seems like it'll have to materialize quickly here.
And I only say Halifax because if your guy's going to move his no trade or whatever, he's probably going to want to stay close to home as opposed to taking a trade to Rouen. But I mean, if he has a chance to win a championship, you got a chance to win a championship. No, exactly. Johnny Bathurst, Fleming, where's he going? Tell me right now.
Who?
Fleming.
Well, actually, before I answer that, I'm going to piggyback on what Pat just said. It's true that Bathurst probably is one of the top 3 teams that have the biggest amount of assets that are interesting. I mean, there's like a big 5 with Rollins, Eneberry, Arsenault, Higgins, and Fleming. But like I said earlier, there is no concrete Fleming is going there, it's like, oh, he would fit nicely there. Oh, Rollins would fit nicely there. There's nothing like concrete. As for Fleming, he would be a great. Well, he's probably would be one of the best backup in the league in Halifax. But are they willing to pay for him? Maybe I heard that Hagen, I don't know how to say that, in Rouen is really not happy. So do you want to have like a guy that is not happy backing up in an all-in season? Maybe Fleming has a chance to go there. And yeah, that would be my two guess, to be honest. I can't see Fleming coming back after Christmas unless the offers are ridiculous. Like, I see he will be gone. Those are my two biggest guess, Halifax or Rouen, or maybe out of the blue. I don't know why I thought about that. Chicoutimi, their number one goalie, Fernandez, has been underperforming a lot. He's a guy from Montreal. He's a guy from Quebec. I mean, next year he will be one of the good goalie at 20 if he has a good defense in front of him. And we all know that Chicoutimi has a lot to pay. So yeah, I'm just gonna put that out there. Chicoutimi just for the fun of it, but more than likely Halifax or Rouen-Noranda.
Anybody else got any questions for each other? I guess. I mean, we don't have to fire questions to you guys. What do you guys have questions for each other?
I have a question actually for Pat. We all know that Sylvain Couturier loved Henneberry. Would you be happy if Cape Breton picks up Henneberry?
I mean, it's definitely something that would fit what you'd be looking for. It's a guy who's going to be in the league next year. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
In terms of a 19-year-old forward, to me, I said Fauchon's probably the top guy in the market. Henneberry's probably right there at number 2 for me. So that's depending on the price. And obviously, you could come back to me in a time machine after 2025. if the playoff run doesn't go as well, I'd want the draft picks back. But in terms of what you're looking for, that's that would be right up there. And I'm glad you mentioned Higgins as well. Not necessarily a need for Cape Breton, but to me, he's he has to be perhaps the most coveted defenseman in the league. Maybe Angus Booth if Shawinigan makes him available. But I like the term Big Five. Bathurst has definitely got some guys, and Henneberry could be we know Sylvain doesn't mind making trades, particularly with people he's familiar with. So maybe we'll see him Henneberry switch colors and play for the Eagles.
And I have a question for the Q review guy. I don't remember your name. Sorry, man. Would you like a package with Rollins and Fleming for the fun in Halifax?
Yeah, I mean, of course, everyone's talking about Halifax getting these assets. Like, obviously, I want to get Rollins and Fleming, but I just don't. It's hard for Halifax because they don't have a first-round pick this year.
Yeah.
They gave up the farm basically for Doucette and Lawrence last year, so they really took that risk trading all their draft picks last season. But I mean, we all know that Cam Russell will figure something out.
Yeah.
Something out. He always loves making trades this time of year. So, yeah, I would have no problem with Rollins and Fleming. But Milner's been pretty good in his last few starts. So we'll see if they give him the chance or if they go out and pick up a more experienced backup.
We'll go get the Team Canada teammates in St. Hilaire and pair him with Rousseau. But if you guys take off your individual team hats, which GM in the division do you think is under the most pressure to kind of make moves this year? Is it Stella in his first trade period, Couturier, who obviously wants to make moves? Cam Russell's got to build a contender because, I mean, they're second in the league. I don't know how much pressure the Bathurst Cody Dwyer's under, but I mean, like you said in the preseason, it is his team, and there's an appetite to win down there in Bathurst. And I guess Jeremy, you can take this one if you think it's Richie. But which GM do you guys think is kind of in the most pressure packed? And we'll include Holton, even though we don't have an Islanders representative. Kind of forget about them, but which one would be the most under pressure in this trade period?
Well, I think it's got to be Halifax. I mean, last year there was rumblings that they were going to trade Zach Leroux so that they could prepare for this season. They decided to hold on to Leroux, and now they kind of screwed themselves having 3 or 4 guys. Well, I'm just saying, like, they have 3 or 4 guys that, are superstars, essentially. They have their core 4 in Furlong, Dumais, Vidicek, and Cataford, and they don't have any support guys with them. So I think Cam Russell's under a lot of pressure to bring in some guys and make this their year.
Yeah, I would say Halifax as well, just because of the teams contending. Halifax and Moncton are there, but Moncton, don't get me wrong, I don't think people should sleep on what Halifax is going to look like next season. They could actually still be pretty decent, but Moncton is going to be a team that really should make noise next season. This year is almost like a bonus for them. So Halifax to me is probably under the most pressure. Moncton's probably under the least pressure because of that. But then the other teams all have things going too. I mean, the Eagles, we're talking locally, and maybe that's just me being in that market. There's so much focus on wanting to be competitive to get the crowds up. That's been a concern here. But you look at the bottom half of the division, Bathurst, St. John, Charlottetown, I think there's pressure there collectively because that group was towards the bottom last year. They're on the bottom this year, and I'm not seeing that necessarily changing anytime soon. So I think those teams kind of need to see what they can do to shore up the future. So I think there's a lot of pressure all around the division. But to what Chris said, Halifax to me would be the team. It's they have some good pieces coming back, but it's definitely win now. And like you said, they held off on making moves last year for the purpose of wanting to win this year. So it's time to win.
Yeah.
I actually heard. Sorry. Go ahead, Jamie.
I agree with everything. I go everything with everything you guys have said. I think Halifax is clearly under the most pressure. I'll touch a little bit on St. John, just where we got Anthony Stella kind of running the show now over Trevor Georgie. I think there's a little bit of pressure just to kind of create some structure in this rebuild. I think right now there's just everything's kind of all over the place. It's still kind of in that feel of year 0/1 of the Memorial Cup rebuild. I think there's kind of a desire to set this up where there's clearly some structure and some planning over how this build's going to go back up. Right now, it's just kind of flat. And the thing about St. John is that they're clearly desire to get younger players. They clearly desire to get draft picks, but at the same time, they're not under a ton of pressure to do a lot right now. They could do a lot during the draft. They could do a lot at the trade period next year even. So it's kind of an intriguing year where the Sea Dogs could be quite busy just if things go their way, or they could be quite quiet and do their business later.
I'll pose this one to is it Chris?
Yep.
Yeah, Chris. This one just popped into my head, so it might sound a little ridiculous, but let's just say Halifax were to trade Cataford to a team like Rimouski, who are going to be, hosting the Memorial Cup next year. In exchange, Halifax just gets a bunch of assets to then go and flip to acquire bigger names for this year. What would your reaction to something like that be?
2 hat tricks in the last 4 games. I don't know who said fan like that, but I don't know. That is definitely something to consider. I mean, trading Dume, you're obviously not going to do that. Vidicek, you won't want to trade him either. He just got back from World Junior Camp, but I think Cataford, if you decide to do that, is the only expendable option. I mean, he's probably got the most value of anyone on the team. And I mean, again, I don't think fans would be happy with that, but definitely something they could think about.
I guess it would have to depend on what the return is off of the picks that you get. I think the Islanders, who obviously we don't have a representative here, I think they're not under pressure, but it's interesting what they do. I mean, Michael Horth, at some point you're building around Marcus Kiersey, but he can fetch you a lot of assets. But in the time to get better, they got Carter Bickle, who could be a very good backup for him. I just don't know what Charlottetown's going to do in this division, because they kind of need to start climbing up. They had a run of many years of going to the quarterfinals and even the final, but they seem to be stuck. Do you guys feel that they kind of seem to be stuck and they're not sure where they are? And I think it would be year 2 of this rebuild, and a guy like Kiersey could fetch them a lot of assets. They've got Hawkins that they could move as a 20-year-old. Horth they could move. I don't know if they'd move more or no, but they're kind of, obviously we don't have anyone to talk about them, but what do you guys feel on the Charlottetown?
Yeah, I think what you said is accurate. It's interesting because Halton's a really good GM at filling gaps, particularly with these Ontario connections. You mentioned Morneau is a case of that, and Bickle also, but you can't always rely on those guys to come in and be your impact players. Like every now and then you'll hit on one. But if you're a good GM at finding free agent connections, you're going to find guys that fill gaps, but not necessarily guys that are going to be stars that can either lead you to a title or cash out on. You talk about the 20-year-olds. Jim told me when I interviewed him Friday that it was no secret they were getting calls on Horth. Hawkins probably a little bit further down the pecking order because there's only so many spots for 20-year-olds on contenders. And now you're getting these wrinkles of all these guys potentially with the rumors of Robida, Nadeau, Gendron all coming back. Then that pushes all the guys down. Plus you have Mianscum is obviously the top 20 out on the market. Reynolds, if what Jamie says is he's staying in St. John, that opens things up a little bit. But to me, the big asset there in Charlottetown is Horth, and I'm sure they can get something for him. But realistically, I'm not really sure what else they're going to sell. They've got some good pieces at different age groups, but I'm not sure it's really adding up to anything right now. And like I said, I know they've got a good coach and GM who happens to be the same guy, so I'm sure he'll figure something out. But yeah, kind of what Adam hinted, I'm not really seeing the clear direction there at the moment. Maybe it'll look a lot clearer in a couple of weeks, but Horth to me would be the one piece that I would expect to be sold if there's a market for him.
I think that's one of the probably one of the better. If a contender were to go get a depth defenseman, I think Carl Etienne Michel is probably one of the, one of those guys that you don't think about as being a good, his name's not going to pop off the page as being a player that every team's going to want to go out and get. Not your power play quarterback or for anything like that, but he's your prototypical 5'6", shutdown defenseman that would just be a great addition to any team's blue line that wants to try and win this year.
I thought Johnny was going to say something. I thought you were.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that Charlottetown for me reminds me of like a party mixed ship. I mean, there's like a bit of good stuff everywhere, but nothing is amazing. So, I mean, do you have like I think Pat just said it. Do you have like good pieces at different age that don't match together well? So you really don't know what's going to come out of that. But in my opinion, Jim Hulton is like the best coach in the whole league and probably one of the good GMs. So I'm not scared that something will come good out of that. But as of right now, that mix just seems odd to me. But they have some good assets. I mean, they could have some pretty good things if they trade like Michael Hort, or even if they decide to trade a Kiersey, never know. They could get a good haul out of that and then start their rebuild from scratch. But as of right now, it looks weird. That team just looks weird.
It does, and it's a team that you don't want to play if you get into a playoff matchup with them because they are a well-coached team. But just for some reason, like a Marcus Kiersey to Rimouski as a team like next year that obviously is hosting the Memorial Cup, which we don't talk about anymore. But it kind of feels is this the first time that they've announced the Memorial Cup before a trade deadline for the next year coming up?
Well,
usually is it because I think that's one of the smarter things that they should try and do every year, because now Shawinigan knows that they're able to sell. But I can't remember in the last 5 years that at least I've been here that they announced it before the trade deadline. Is that something that seems common, Jamie, or no?
I feel like that is common. I'm thinking back to the very dramatic one when Shawinigan was awarded it over St. John, and that was definitely that was definitely in the fall. So I do think that's more common. And I know the last few years have just been such a disaster with COVID. That might have screwed things up. But I do feel like that is in normal times how it has been. But I may be wrong on that.
Now, Rimouski's interesting because to me, you have 6 teams in the league that are kind of above the rest, and Rimouski's in that weird 7 spot. It's the only other team that's got a positive goal differential. So how active would they be in buying guys that can return? I mean, Kiersey, you talk about that. He is only 17, so it'd be hard to imagine. But I guess if you give Charlottetown the moon, anything can happen. But would they possibly go the other way? Like if somebody gave them a ton for Charles Truchon, who would be one of the better 20-year-olds on the market on the blue line if he was available, would they cash out on him? Other than him, Christophe Rondeau would be a name of the 20-year-old blue liner that would probably net interest, but Rimouski will be a team that's interesting to watch. And I don't know about you guys, maybe for the sake of like stirring up a little controversy here, do you think that the timing of the name of the league changing, coming out the same week that the Memorial Cup host was announced after all the controversy about Moncton stepping out because they're a Maritime team, can we connect any dots, or is tinfoil hat being worn over here?
Jeremy's a good conspiracy guy.
Oh, I mean,
I thought of that too, Pat. I thought of that exact same thing.
This is something that should have been done,
when they changed the logo.
In my opinion, this should have been done years ago.
Yeah.
I made a joke the other day to myself, for that matter, but I said, just because I wanted it done for years, I said, Cicchini has done more in 1 year than Corto did in 30 years.
Yep.
And that's I don't know how I feel that way, but I mean, just some of the reaction from the media out there, especially the ones in Quebec, it was embarrassing. for Stephane Leroux to suddenly think that players like Mike Bossy and Guy Lafleur have no more
history.
place in this league just because the name was just foolish.
The Stephane Leroux heel turn this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was Alex who pointed out that those guys played for a team that's no longer there, and they're in Bathurst in Johnny's
Yep.
Market. So
Exactly.
yeah, it should have been done. It does feel like that though. We didn't get the
No,
Memorial
but-
Cup, but hey, we got the draft and we got the top prospects game, and now we changed it to the Maritime League. So we're giving you guys everything, just not the Memorial Cup.
We did have it the last 2 times, so it's
We're gonna blame Regina on that. That's Regina's fault. Let's be honest. Sorry, bro, Johnny Rocket.
In my opinion, I mean, they just wasted like the number one opportunity to do that. The draft is in Moncton. Why don't you announce that in Moncton and the Maritimes, like with a big bang? Like that is, I don't know. I mean, I'm
It just
totally
seems-
for it, but
yeah,
the
it just
timing is
seems-
stupid.
It just seems like that would have been the perfect moment because there's always a commissioner's press conference
Yeah.
the day before the draft.
Yep.
You know, that just seems like it would have been the perfect place to announce something like that, given where it's being held.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Has a league
Joyeux
ever
Noel
changed its name?
Moncton, Joyeux Noel Maritimes. Here's what you've been wanting for 20 years. Enjoy it.
I think, Jeremy, like you said, I think it's just Cecchini trying to put his mark on the league. And to be fair, I mean, we can say what we want about Courteau, but Joel Courteau embraced the Maritimes coming into the queue. So he was there overseeing all that. So full credit to that. And I said this on Corey Arsenault's show that to me, you look at the OHL and the WHL. The WHL has a pretty geographically accurate name. The OHL technically doesn't because they have 3 American teams, which are obviously strong. Saginaw hosting the World Cup. And as another side note, very thankful. I'd heard speculation that that American teams wouldn't be considered for the Memorial Cup. To me, that's BS. If they're in your league, they should be able to host the Memorial Cup. I'm sure Saginaw is going to do a great job. So all the best to them. But, you know, all the credit to Saginaw, Erie, Flint. You know, despite hiccups in Flint, they've been very good franchises in the OHL. But the OHL could survive without those teams.
Right.
They could survive as an Ontario Hockey League. The Q, as it's structured now, cannot sustain itself on just Quebec teams. So not only are there teams geographically in the Maritimes is at the heart of the league. So I think that's probably another reason that we saw them change the name.
Yeah, and that's like, go ahead, Chris.
They're always one of the most competitive divisions every year, so it's hard to, not include the name. We were saying that on the show last week. They're an integral part of the league.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad with all the reaction from the Twitter that came down on, like, we didn't take Quebec out of the name. You still have your province in the name. Imagine the uproar if they'd have called it the East Hockey League, like the Eastern Hockey League.
Awful.
Well,
Go
that already
Western,
exists.
yeah, like oh my goodness.
Since I'm the only French here, I can say stuff that I heard on the French sports thing. Their big fuss was obviously that the Maritimes were added to the name and blah 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 blah. But one of the biggest things that RDS and TVA Sports said is that in English, Quebec's come first, but in French, Quebec's come last. Like, who gives a crap about that? Like,
Yeah,
it is a bit weird, but yeah,
You're more of a fuss when they start calling it the QM instead of the Q.
yeah.
Not the QM, but I'm sure that could be a whole nother podcast on that.
Sorry, I sidetracked.
No, absolutely not, because that's the same thing I had. I mean, the Western Hockey League, Calgary can never host, Edmonton can never host because their buildings are, at some point, the Flames and the Oilers might have long playoff runs, so that puts them out. They haven't had a Memorial Cup in the U.S. in the Western League since I think '98 with Spokane. So just you don't hear that when it goes to WHL, like, oh, Red Deer can't go for the Memorial Cup because it has to go back to the United States or it has to go back to Brandon, right? It's just one of those silly things. In the preseason show, you guys gave us our preseason predictions. Obviously, Chris, I'm assuming you did give yours on your Q Review show. So we'll let you go first. What was your preseason prediction, and do you want to change it?
Like as far as the division goes?
No, as far as to go to the final.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Finals prediction, sorry.
I said Rwanda Halifax at the start. Assuming that Halifax does make some moves like Cam Russell usually does, I really want to change that. But yeah, I think it still looks pretty accurate.
You guys would know because it was on the show, but I don't remember. Halifax and Rouen.
I actually didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't type yours down there, Pat. But Jamie Tozer had Wren in Halifax. Johnny, you had Wren in Moncton.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys want to. I'm trying to think. I think you had. I feel like you had Wren in Halifax as well. Like there was a lot of Wren in Halifax there.
I'm pretty sure he had, because I was one of the last guy on your shows, and I was like the odd one that didn't show those two teams. So
yeah, I remember I was saying Rouen, Halifax, but I also thought Victoriaville and Drummondville were were in there. I mean, to me, it's funny. I should have known this was coming, but I hadn't thought about it until right now. To me, I don't see how Baie-Comeau doesn't get to the final with the team that they have now, as long as they're going to buy. This is tough. I might look like a fool, but I'll say Baie-Comeau and Rouen-Noranda.
I think when I thought this was going to happen, we'd have a few more trades than one by the time we recorded this thing. So I thought we'd have a couple contenders. Like the rumors would come out a couple weeks, like you guys had initially said before, so we kind of know what was happening at the draft. But Johnny, you stick with Wren and Moncton?
Yeah, I will stick with Rouen Moncton. I don't know. I think that Baie-Comeau will choke for some reason. Gravel won't be as good as they think, and Ciarlo will blow the league in Blainville. And as for the other option, which is Halifax, I don't know. Sorry, buddy, but I don't have any confidence in Halifax at all. I don't, as of now. Maybe with the trade that they will make, I will be like, oh shit, yeah. But as of now, I don't think so. So I'll stick with Moncton. Yeah, Steinman has been golding like freaking amazing, and I think that Richie will have a few guys to help them maybe. And I'll stick with Rouen and Moncton.
Oh, assuming that the trade deadline stays this dead, I will actually switch Halifax to Baie-Comeau. just because Baie-Comeau, I had them finish second in the division at the start of the year. I just thought Chicoutimi and their young guys, I thought they were going to be a lot better, but Baie-Comeau has really surprised me. And I saw them live. Justin Poirier is no joke. That whole team is just built very well. I think, Rouen-Noranda and Baie-Comeau.
Tozer, you had Wren in Halifax. I'm sure you're going to probably stick with them, or you're going to make some changes.
Yeah, I thought about staying with them. I really like Drummondville. I think that they're a threat to win. Like they've looked phenomenal when I've seen them. But I'm gonna keep Rouen-Noranda, but I'm gonna swap out Halifax for Baie-Comeau. I also have some fears, like Johnny said. Like I keep waiting for them to kind of fall back down to earth, but it didn't happen at all in the first half. And they're having like historically one of the greatest regular seasons of all time. And I looked at their numbers the other day, like they're right on pace after 25 games. They're on the same pace as Quebec last year, St. John in 2011, Halifax in 2013. Like they're right up there with the great Q teams over the past decade or so. So I just can't not have them in the final, I think, at this point. So I think Baie-Comeau is going to sneak in there against Rouen-Noranda. Halifax, I just fear Halifax just isn't going to be able to add enough to kind of get them over the hump.
I'm interested to see what Baie-Comeau does with a goaltender that's over 900. I mean, they've gotten this far with Ciarlo batting .890. So you bring Gravel in, who I believe sitting at a 912.
Something like that, yeah.
Had that solid offense and defense in front of him. Like, he could be phenomenal.
And something with Baie-Comeau, I was actually talking to one of my... Oh, sorry.
Just interject. Just had it up that I don't know if you guys knew, but the website is actually now officially showing that trade, the Ciarlo trade.
Jeez, about time.
Yeah.
Must be the interns working on Sundays.
Yeah.
Wow. They haven't run a website in 4 months or 6 months, so why do we think this was going to be any different? Like, good Lord,
do you like how when you look at the score bug, it's a 4-3 game, you have no idea if it went to OT or shootout?
Yeah.
When you scroll over the plus minus to see who was on the ice, no,
not there. That's my favorite on my post game shows. I'm like, it's 4-3, and then I get off the show and I look at it went to overtime. All right, cool. I had no idea that was happening, but. My favorite, too, is when you're on your phone and you try to scroll it and it won't let you scroll over. You just get that one game. Like, quite annoying. I think I had
quickly ahead a week and then back to the week before.
On the website, like on the computer, it scrolls all the way back, and then you got to go forward. I had Drummondville and Halifax. I still like Drummondville. I still think they are going to add some pieces. I mean, they obviously added defenseman Komarov and Hachette, or the forward Hachette. Like, I can't remember who tweeted. They're building a Vegas-style defense where they're all 6 foot, 200 pounds. I think they'll add a goaltender to kind of offset Riley Mercer, so he's not playing as much. And I had Halifax just because, I mean, they're doing what I kind of thought they would, but the team that I had on the outside that I knew could make some damage, I didn't think it was going to be like this, was Baie-Comeau, because we had talked about it in the playoffs, in the offseason. We were going to compete with them all this year and maybe even into next year. But I think, oh, man. Yeah, I think I'd probably move to Baie-Comeau. I think I'll go Drummondville and Baie-Comeau. I just that second round matchup for Moncton, no matter who they get in the first round, they're either going to get they're probably going to be a Halifax Moncton matchup again in that 2-3 spot. So depending on the trades, I think Moncton might be able to do some damage against them. I say this now and it'll come back to haunt me, but yeah, I think I'll stick with Drummondville in the West, and I'll go Baie-Comeau, who I kind of had on the outside as a wild card. I'll switch to them.
I really want to see Drummondville acquire a goaltender. I know a lot of people aren't that confident in Riley Mercer to lead them to a championship, so it'll be interesting to see if they acquire another goaltender.
Well, St. Hilaire has to go somewhere.
Yeah, that's where I got him going.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the big question. I just like the fact we're talking. I think everybody can agree that we're going to see a great second round this year.
Oh, yeah.
Last year, basically a foregone conclusion. The 4 teams that were going to be in the Final Four, but this year there's some more competition. Like those 6 teams, I said they're kind of separated themselves, but obviously being biased, but the Eagles are going to make some moves to get better. And I mentioned Rimouski before. I think that you have those 6, and then I think there's going to be enough competitive spirit, so to speak, perhaps from a couple other teams that aren't in that group to at least make those series interesting. So should be a fun playoff.
Yeah, for me, I guess
you had Brin and Moncton.
I had Brin and Moncton. I said that with my Homer hat on. I was channeling my inner Andrew Barrington when I made that prediction.
That kid, for all he does, he gets on a show once a week. His name is mentioned on our show at some point.
You know what? The Moncton thing is, I'm still confident. I just don't know if it's the same homerish confidence that I had in the
Come on, Jeremy. Put some balls.
I'll be changing my roulette prediction to Baie-Comeau. I will be in honor of the world's greatest trivia team name. The hashtag will report to Baie-Comeau. I'm on board with that, and you know what? Baie-Comeau and Drummondville.
Yeah. We've all picked an Eastern versus Western team, which it does switch when you get into that third round. But right now, the Eastern playoffs would be Baie-Comeau versus Bathurst, Halifax, St. John, Moncton, Cape Breton, and Chicoutimi and Rimouski. Charlottetown, I think, would cross over. So there you go. All your Maritime teams in this new league are headed to the playoffs. But yeah, you're looking at some very good second rounds. Which last year it was not good second rounds like at all. I think Moncton was the only one that went 5. So I guess before we let you guys get out of here, just any others other than the divisions, just any second half things you're excited to see after the trade period or even at the World Juniors.
Well, like I said, I just think it's fun that we've got multiple teams that want to contend. And I feel like if Baie-Comeau was a team that was expected to be good in the preseason, no, they're expected to be good, but expected to be a contender, maybe there'd be more of a fear of them running away with the league. But I think the fact they didn't have that preseason hype is maybe making us think the rest of the league's a little bit closer to them than they are. So I'm just excited to see a competitive race. Like I said, I think the Eagles should get better. So I think there'll be some competition for some teams coming up. So I think it's going to be a good second half.
Does anyone potentially see Bradley Nadeau leaving Maine to compete for a Memorial
That's
Cup?
that guy in the bottom.
No.
That's that guy in the bottom.
No.
He's probably on his way there.
You don't think so?
No.
No, I really doubt that. Honestly, yeah.
Isn't
They're
there a
having,
top
like,
line that Maine, all New Brunswick guys?
It is,
all
yeah.
the Brunswick guys on top line, one of the top lines in all of college hockey right now. Think of like how good college hockey is. Like this is one of the greatest lines in the entire country. Yeah, they're phenomenal. Maine doesn't have a lot beyond the three of them, but they're really good.
Yeah, featuring that third line features Sea Dogs legend Lyndon Brin.
Lyndon Brin.
I didn't
My
think
brother
it
went to Maine, so I'll play him with the team line.
What's that?
What about you, Jamie? What do you want to see, or what are you excited to see in the second half?
I'm hoping Moncton can stay kind of in the race with Halifax. Like I'm hoping Halifax doesn't just pull away here after the trade deadline, and it's like a 20-point gap between them. Like I'm hoping that maybe we can get a bit of a competitive race for the first, and then if the Eagles can kind of get in the mix too, I think that'd be a lot of fun. And down the stretch here, even the bottom half of the division, even I think if kind of what we had last year with Charlottetown, St. John, and Bathurst kind of battling it out, and for those bottom spots might be fun too.
Johnny Rocket?
The number one thing I will look after Christmas is how bad Sherbrooke will drop in the standing, because we have their first round pick, so I want to have a lottery pick. So go Mien Scum, go away, go with Saint-Hilaire, go away, go and get the crap out of that and drop in the standings. That's exactly what I'm going to look at. Yeah.
Sounds like us
Yeah,
here with
sounds like
Valdor.
We'll watch St. John for the same reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how you hope for your team, but you're really hoping for that one team to just absolutely.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because at a certain point, I was looking at the standing. I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me? Like they're gonna end like top 6, top 7? Like what the heck?"
I think that happened with Valdor last year too. They got off to a bit of a good start, and we're like at the trade deadline, we're like, just please drop off. And then we dropped off and almost became our own lottery pick, as well with Valdor. Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Tozer. Like we talked about it last year with Halifax and Moncton, and Jeremy's preseason prediction was they were going to battle all the way to the division. I kind of hope we stay with them. I don't think Moncton's going to be that active. I've said it many times. I think 2 trades for a bottom 6 forward and a depth defenseman and maybe some pick swaps. I don't think they're going to go big game hunting. Now the Mueller situation may have changed that because he was playing well enough to be a 20-year-old next year. He's obviously going pro. So, but I want to see that Halifax Moncton rivalry continue to go in the second half and another playoff series, because it just adds so much fuel. Sure, Cape Breton can have some fun and they can be competitive, and we like Pat, but yeah, I want to see Halifax and Moncton kind of stay together, and the rest of the division just be competitive. It's no fun going to the rink at the last month of the season knowing you're going to beat teams over and over and over again when you kind of load up. What about you, Jimmy?
I'm kind of on the same as you. Like I want to see more competition. I think it's comforting to know that Cape Breton will be buying.
Yeah,
because that's one team I'd want to avoid in the first round. Like right now, if it'd be a Moncton, Cape Breton.
It was the same thing last year too. Yeah,
It's like if there's any team that you want to avoid in the first round, it's probably a team that buys. And after after last night's game, I'd be shitting my pants if if I was with the Eagles in the first round.
And we had that last year too. We had that same thing.
Yeah, so it's it's comforting to know that that's the direction that they'll be taking, and they'll. With that being said, they will probably surpass, Rimouski, and Rimouski will drop down, and that's probably who we end up facing in the first round, which, could go any way, because you don't know. Rimouski could decide to go out and get some 18-year-olds at the trade deadline that are available, that are back next year, that, like the Cataford that I mentioned earlier. It's something that very well could happen, and
Fillion's going to play well against us.
Oh, if
he's still there at the second half, yeah.
Like if there's a Canton Miller trade to Rimouski, I think Fillion might go the other way back to Quebec. So that's something to keep an eye on. But it's just the comfort of knowing that we probably won't see Cape Breton in the first round. It makes me feel a little better.
Yeah, knock on wood. That is hope. Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the Maritime Trade Preview Show. This was a lot of fun to have you all at once. Have a safe holidays, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas to you all also.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Thanks,
Thanks a lot.
Feliz Navidad.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
I gotta see if I can end this recording.